to a new perspective. My name is Casey, and I'm here with Brennan. And as you can
Hey.
see, we have our guest, Isaac, Isaac Bennett, and we have a pretty good show today. And I think I'm going to pass it off to Brennan so he can give an introduction to Isaac, and then we can get started here. So, Brennan.
Yes, thank you so much, Casey. We have Isaac Bennett with us today. He's a solutions consultant with Flexware Innovation. For the past 15 years, Isaac has been working as a IT leader in manufacturing, leading the IT department for Wright and McGill, known for their American-made Eagle Claw fish hooks, which I personally always seek out and buy myself when I decide to go
Ooh.
fishing. And recently worked as the head of IT for Detroit Manufacturing Systems. Isaac started in the Industry 4.0 journey almost 10 years ago, helping plants around the world implement smart manufacturing projects with an emphasis on bringing business value through the use of technology. Welcome, Isaac.
Yeah, nice to be here.
We're very excited to
Yeah,
have you here.
absolutely. We what kind of prompted us to bring you on here was an article that you had written and put out on LinkedIn a few weeks back called "Shut Down Your IT Department." So that's kind of going to be the theme of what we discuss today. Is what does this mean? That sounds a little controversial. I think if I was an IT person, I'd be like, "Oh no, don't do that." And I don't think that's the intent. It's just kind of taking a new perspective on what your IT department can be.
I see
So
what you did there.
if you wouldn't mind, maybe give us a little bit of background about yourself, and tell us what prompted you to write this article, and we'll have a chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely clickbait, right? I'm trying to learn the social media ways, try to get people to get their attention. So that was the idea, but it got my attention. I think it was a New York Times article that posted that, and started reading about that. And it wasn't specific to manufacturing, um, but then I kind of wanted to relate it to the manufacturing environment. So, what prompted me was, I'm a tend to be more of a strategic thinker. I like staying in that realm. I like staying on the cusp of technology. What's new? What's the latest and greatest thing out
Mhm.
there? I would say I'm a dangerous in a lot of areas because I'm like a squirrel. I get distracted real easily. Um, so like I see, something really interesting in the technology realm. I'll read about it, I'll learn a little about it, and then I'll get distracted by something new. And so I know a little about a lot is usually what I say. But yeah, so
That's fair.
as a head of IT for a couple different companies, and wanting to push, especially in manufacturing, wanted to push manufacturing companies to be more innovative. um, IT in general is getting out of the old school way where we had to sit in a dark room with no windows and monitor servers all the time and
Yep.
Mhm.
upgrade servers, and then plan for replacing servers and making sure they have security patches, and all the things that went into IT when I first started are slowly disseminating to the cloud, into SaaS services and things like that. So
Mhm.
So that sounds like a lot of infrastructure. And you're suggesting that the
yeah,
the infrastructure in particular is changing, or the landscape of infrastructure
Yeah.
is changing.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you look at your computer today, and it doesn't have a disk drive anymore, right? So you're not loading
That's true.
software. That was another big job of deploying software packages to companies, and all the work that goes into that stuff. Now you go online and log in to a website, right?
Yep.
Um, so then how do you shift in IT? How do you shift where your value is? Because
Yep.
traditionally, IT, especially in manufacturing, usually reports to a CFO, and they're looked at as a cost center. And my view was, okay, how can we really truly add value to
Mhm.
the company? And in my view, is if that time that we spent on updating servers and updating software and deploying, and what can we do to add more value? And that is, for me, it's like, what is our processes? Where do we have problems in our processes, and how can we
Mhm.
automate some of that stuff? And and give them tools to do their job better is kind of my view. So.
Okay. Well, I did read your article, and I have a question specifically. You were just talking about how IT individuals usually report up to the CFO. You had talked about having IT professionals embedded more or less in teams throughout the organization. Now, do you mean specifically like having those people report into, say, director of manufacturing, director of engineering, whatever, et cetera? Or do you mean kind of like have these people have a vertical, like know the software and support the software for this particular vertical of your business, or like maybe some mix of both, or kind of what are you thinking there?
Yeah.
So there is a big push for the IT realm, and some companies are doing this more than others, is putting IT people as business relationship managers. So that's terminology that's been coming out for the last 5 or 6 years, more and more. And so the idea being is, me as the IT person, I always say, hey, I'm not, when I walk into a room, into a plant, and try to teach them about smart manufacturing, I'm always very apprehensive of making sure they know that I'm the IT person. Like, I know the technology, I know how it works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know your processes, and especially in manufacturing, even the same company can have 20 plants and they all have 20 different processes, depending on their governance and how their standards.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to tell you that I know your process and I know how you operate. And I also don't know your problems. I don't know where are your pains. And the point being is, if I can embed an IT person into that department, whether it be even it's sales or supply chain or whatever, if I can embed them and they can get to know the processes in that department and the problems in that department, and then as the IT side person, they can go as a liaison back to IT and say, hey, we got this problem in this process in this department. How can we solve that using technology? The people in that department don't know the technology. A lot of times don't even know what the own capabilities of their own company are as far as technology is concerned. So it's kind of the liaison between the technology and the department. And for me, the best thing to do is embed that person in that department, have them report to somebody like, as you stated, head of manufacturing or CFO or whatever, be sitting in those meetings and really understand the pain points of that department. So that's kind of, in a broad stroke, what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Let's see here. Oh yeah. Just trying to peruse through all this. It's a good article, which I did, just to point it out, did share it on the Twitch page. It's pinned at the top, and should be a comment on the live stream on LinkedIn. Still a little interesting and new to us, but it's there in case you guys want to find it and click on it, check it out. Yeah, so I know you mentioned the no-code MES platforms. Do you want to maybe touch a little bit on that, or like what, or maybe with what you were just talking about, like what new technologies? I'm trying to think how to word it. Struggling here. Just like maybe let's start with the no-code part. I think that'd be interesting to go over, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, especially in manufacturing, and we talked about it, that and I was just talking to a guy who worked for SAP and also works for NTT Data. He's been doing smart manufacturing stuff for, I don't know, longer. I've been doing it for about 10 years. He's probably doing it for 20 years. Super nice guy. But the point, I had this like 45-minute conversation with him last week about the MES space. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how crowded it is. There's so many MES systems out there, people jumping into the MES realm. And then there's the traditional view of, well, we can do everything in our ERP. So yeah, a lot of custom ERPs built for the manufacturing floor. So as it relates to the getting rid of your IT department, I've had a lot of conversations with people in operations and manufacturing about
Mhm.
kind of handing over the keys, or giving them the keys to their own destiny of, when I want to change a line, because I see that all the time. Like the process on this particular manufacturing line, we need to tweak it, and we need to add an op station or take one away, add some automation. So that's happening constantly. That's their bread and butter. That's where they make money, right? So, but then if they have to sit there and wait for IT for 3 months to add an op station to this line, we're a very busy IT department, and hey,
Yep.
you're in the queue. It's going to take us a couple months to get to you, and then probably another few weeks to code it and get it back to you.
Yep.
That's where I see, the more modern software that is low code, no code,
Mhm.
giving them kind of the keys to say, I can go in there, in rather month or 2 months, I can train my guys on how to use this piece of software, and they're able to add an op station to a line
Wow.
that they need an op station at. So
And
that's
that would
kind of,
save a lot of time,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
As we know, most
yeah,
IT departments are sometimes understaffed. Sometimes, not
yeah,
every company, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit that like I said before, every manufacturing process is different.
Yeah.
But the idea would be kind of like when I correlate it to the finance world.
Mhm.
And I say this all the time, is like, if the finance department needed to call IT every time they needed a pivot table made, I mean, they would go crazy because they would be sitting waiting, have a pivot table, and I correlate that to the guys in the operations plant floor. They should have a tool that they
Mhm.
can use and they can learn, that they don't have to rely on IT every single time they want to do a small change. So
Yeah. Exactly.
So it kind of is tickling my brain cell here. I worked for
Brain cell.
yeah, I worked for a new EV manufacturer
Mhm.
in the United States here, and when we were trying to bring up the plant, we ended up going with a very old school MES system. So it was a company called MES Tech. I don't think they exist anymore because I tried Googling them before this and got a bunch of bad stuff. All I
Oh
could really
no.
find was the press release that Rockwell Automation purchased them. But anyways, yeah, it was a very, very challenging implementation. And like you had to very clearly define all your processes on a brand new greenfield manufacturing plant where if something was wrong, it took them 2 days and two different teams, some working overseas, to correct the process because it was all hard coded Java backend stuff.
yeah,
Melted my mind. Worst integration of an MES platform I have ever witnessed. And so your article, when you started touching on, or the end part where you asked ChatGPT, why should I do this? I mean, it rang home to me. I was like,
didn't
that
it?
is it. That is it. That is it. Like, Flexware Innovation has a no code MES that lives on the Ignition, or that's built on the Ignition platform using
Mhm.
Perspective and database backend. And, yes, we coded that, but the end users don't have to. There's drag and drop configuration, there's prompts, there's user tools. It's very visually appealing to stand up a very flexible manufacturing line. And like, I'm hoping maybe you can touch on how the conversation goes with the people who are making those decisions on when to do something like this versus, hey, let's take something that, I'm comfortable with, that we have implemented at other organizations, or that this is
Mhm.
how you do it if you're going to be a manufacturer, kind of a situation. I know that's a long loaded thing, but like that's the things that I've bumped up against in my career, being on that end, saying, I want this. It puts the process engineers in the software configuring it. It puts the supervisors, the people who should be in here doing this, who know the process, not us trying to tell these people the process and hope that they get it right. How do I sell it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's
That's
a
the
good
hardest
question,
part.
and
Help
Man,
me.
yeah.
I mean, I've been in the similar situations too, right? and my as a former IT leader, I'm always trying to think of, what is truly the total cost of ownership of whatever we're doing, as far as, especially applications and software. Like, what is a licensing fee? What is all that? That stuff's easy to figure out. We need this hardware and we need this licensing fee and this support fee. But how do you, when you go to support that in the future, what is the true total cost of ownership? Like, how many people do I need in IT to support it? If we need to change, how many people do we need? Do we need programmers? So, my thing is always like, hey, we are not, we manufacture products. We are not an IT shop. And especially for, for huge companies, that's, with big capital budgets, that's much more doable. I mean, they can probably hire their own data science department. But for the majority of companies out there, it's just not attainable, and they're not going to spend a ton of money, and you shouldn't have to, especially in like I said, it's not 1992 anymore. We don't have to hard code a IBM AS400 to do everything in our company. There's a lot of of software out there, and like I said, MES it's crowded right now. So, you want to be careful of which MES you're going to choose. You want to choose one that's flexible and easy to use, but also we don't have to be locked into that old way of thinking where we need a bunch of programmers and a bunch of business process owners to support software. We should be able to look at some of the flexible software out there that can tie in using, and we talked about a little bit, using API integration and things like that. I'm in no way saying there's 100%. If anybody knows anything about the automation pyramid, the top level where reporting comes from and where your planning comes from is the ERP system at the top. It doesn't mean that we need to do everything else in that automation pyramid through the MES system, and with the modern tools of API and no code, low code, and things like that. We should be able to integrate those things rather easily. And even if it's a cloud solution, and we can go with, that's a whole nother rabbit hole talking about whether an MES should be cloud or not. But there's a lot of cool tools out there, even for warehouse management and supply chain, and that we can plug in. They're rather inexpensive, that we can tie the data to our ERP and still use our ERP the way the ERP is supposed to be used. So I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Oh, yeah.
I think. Yeah. I guess, Brennan, maybe if I could ask a question. I think you did. This is going by really fast here. No, so again, after reading through your article, I was curious. Since you're talking about, the no code, being able to not have POs or anyone else have to be in charge of it, do you see any issues security wise or any risks with that?
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, risks or
how do you educate yourself as IT professionals to make sure that you're implementing these solutions that are not, putting you at risk?
They're going to be upset, right? They're going to be like,
because I've heard that plenty in industry.
Yeah. Before we went live, we were saying that I was saying that we need to say something controversial to get people to
keep listening.
So
All right, let's hear it.
So I hear this all the time, especially coming from the IT realm and then going into a manufacturing floor. And it's the first, they don't want to listen to a corporate IT guy to tell them how to do their job. They think I'm crazy, but I will admit to them, and one of the reasons I get building a relationship with those guys is I'm like, IT is always the problem, because especially if you've been with a company, especially if you've been with a company that's been hit by ransomware, IT is super hyper vigilant on their security side. And I was with the company that got hit by ransomware, and zero trust became the new thing, and they started just shutting everything off. and I said, yeah, well, yeah, of course we can shut everything off, but then no one can work. So
Yeah.
there's got to be a balance, right?
Right.
And definitely you don't get getting hit by ransomware is a complete nightmare, and it goes on for months and months and months, and you don't want that to happen. So you definitely need to be secure and hyper vigilant on the security side. But at the same time, we need to let people work, and we need to work with them to find a solution. There's always a solution. Like I know how many times I've heard IT immediately say no.
Right.
Well, I would always tell my people, don't say, like, listen, let's have a conversation about it. They have a problem. We should be trying to fix and find a solution for the problem, not just telling them, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Especially you're putting in, a $5 million machine on your plant floor, and the integrators want to connect to it, and IT's like, nope, we're not allowing any outside, remote connections. Well, there's got to be a solution. There's got to be a way to get them a solution in a secure, effective way. I'll tell you, it's definitely a risk, and especially as we go down the route of industrial IoT, and we have the IT person's fear is always that, and it's happened in the past to me, where a guy on the operations technology side, plant floor, decides to go to Best Buy and buy a Linksys switch, unmanaged switch, because his intention is not to bring the network down, but his intention is, I'm going to start plugging this in and getting data from the PLC.
Yeah.
And then
this is exciting.
And then he creates a loop in the network, and then the network guys are freaking out.
Yeah. When I was at Keurig, that happened. It dropped the entire plant for like 3 or 4 hours before someone could figure out that someone connected this switch to this
Did they do
to another switch.
Yeah, we had a network loop at where I worked at Marvin. Oh no.
Yep.
Yeah. So it happens all
common.
the time.
It's happened to all three of us.
Yeah.
I didn't do it, but I was there.
Yeah, I didn't do it either.
Record state.
But yeah, the reaction shouldn't be that we need to help them, right? We need to help them find a solution, not just get mad and take away their switch and say you're stupid. We need to find a solution for them because they had a problem. So there's another. This is a famous story. I don't know if you heard this story, but there's a famous story of a guy in a casino in Vegas who is I don't know if he's an IT guy or a maintenance guy, but a nice casino, had these saltwater fish tanks, and he found a device probably on Amazon or somewhere that was like, hey, you can track your saltwater fish tank, whatever pH balance, saltwater, whatever you need to track. I'm not a saltwater fish guy, but put this device in your fish tank, and then you can get on your mobile phone and you can see whether or not you need to maintain your. So he connected it to the wireless, put it in the fish tank, started monitoring it. Well, there was no security on it, and I don't know if you've ever tried to, sometimes when you're in an airplane and you're just looking for a Bluetooth device, and you see like 58 Bluetooth devices because everybody on the airplane. Similar thing, right? An IoT device was sticking out there broadcasting, and some hackers saw it, hacked into the saltwater fish tank device, and then found a back door into their financial system and started stealing credit card information. So that definitely can happen, and that's definitely a concern. But yeah, we just have to make sure we're thinking about that and being secure. And my thing is always, there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a good balance. There's never going to be a risk-free environment. Not only that, but anybody who's been in IT long enough knows that as soon as a company comes out with a secure protocol, 6 months later, a hacker figures out to hack into it. So it's always a game, back and forth, and you're never going to be 100% secure. It's just impossible. And if we could just eliminate people, that would be 99% of the problem. Because I talked to a CISO from Verizon who said that they did a study that said all it takes is 14 emails before one person clicks on that bad link and you have a vulnerability. So 14 emails, less than 10%, but it's pretty easy to send 14 emails into an environment. So,
well, also, I mean,
Yeah.
speaking from past experience of a friend, if the IT department doesn't empower their engineers to be able to get things done on the plant floor, their engineers are going to figure out how to get things done on the plant floor.
yeah, yep.
They
will.
That might be, hey, I'm going to drop the cellular gateway on the floor and I'm going to connect it to my machine so that I can access it when I need to when it goes down. Or maybe I'm going to put a VNC viewer on here and I'm going to run it through a proxy on our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There are absolutely ways to get to your equipment and to handle things. And if you're not going to empower,
I'm going to set up a LogMeIn account.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many ways to go around it, and that's why you want to prevent that, right? The shadow IT is what we call it, and and if you don't give them solutions 100%, they got to do their job, right? They'll find a way. They're
work
smart
smarter,
guys.
not harder.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And if you don't open the door, if IT doesn't open the door, and going back to the original point of the conversation, we should have an IT guy that works for them. You know what I mean? Because then you have that liaison, you have that person who understands what the operation guys are going through, what their problems are on a day-to-day basis, and then you can come to IT and say, hey guys, these are all the problems they're having. Let's look for a solution.
It's like
instead of just getting mad.
IT.
Yeah, right.
Or at least somebody, if they're on the floor, somebody that has the IT experience, or vice versa. If you have someone in IT that's your liaison, someone that has, I mean, you don't need it, but it's beneficial to have that, either manufacturing or some sort of other experience besides just IT. But obviously it can still be done. Makes it a little easier for people.
Also the opportunity for education too, right? Like, okay, maybe you're not in IT, but we have the correct security group so that you can access this switch, or the management tools that we have to do the things that you need to do every day as an engineer, supporting the facility. Here's this software, here's how we're going to educate you to use it, and we're going to empower you to use it so that I don't have to keep track of the stuff in my tickets all the time. Like, this is on you. If the machine connects to it, it's your thing. But here's the software that we found that's going to help you. You can drag and drop, click, good to go. No code.
Yeah, and then you can say you guys are level 1 support. We are definitely here to support you, but we want you to be the masters of your own domain.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. We had and what Casey was saying, we had a long conversations talking about making a manufacturing IT department. So making a department specifically the people who know OT stuff, people who know IT stuff, and we can cross-train people and we can put them in their own department and they can be those people. So
I will say the most efficient place that I worked had a manufacturing IT department. There was IT and manufacturing IT, both reported up to the same, CF or CTO at the end of the day. But they knew things and were educated on means of IT for manufacturing. Like, there's no other way to put it. It's like when you talk to somebody about, I need this thing, they say, okay, we have these solutions, or we know who to talk to get these solutions to you, rather than like, oh no, that's not SQL, that's not SAP. We don't know how to deal with that. And that's putting boundaries on what people can do. But you understand what I mean. It was efficient and effective.
Which is that's good. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I haven't been around a whole lot, but that's not, maybe it's more common nowadays.
Something we were talking about earlier, and this is jogging my memory, is you had mentioned at one point, Isaac, you came up with, or you worked on something called line in a box or factory in a box.
Oh yeah.
We got to touch on that. And this is starting to make me think like, okay, as an advanced manufacturing engineering team, I'm going to be going out and procuring equipment. I'm going to throw something on the plant floor. I want a seamless solution to bring this up online and create that ROI as quick as possible. How, I've been there. I've been this person who's responsible for that automation to be like, okay, let me talk to all these different people in IT. Let me talk to all these people in this process, blah, blah, blah. How do we get this brought up? Someone's going to come to the plant floor, blah, 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 blah. What is this? Does it solve these problems that I'm they're boiling in my head now.
Yeah.
Like, ah.
Yeah, so this really came out of, this we put together a 5-year IT strategy as it relates to manufacturing, and everybody was having painful issues with supply chain,
Mhm.
and the world inherently is a much smaller place with the way that data is moving across. I mean, um, changes happen much quicker financially,
Mhm.
socially. I mean, as
Yep.
soon as something happens across the world, everybody knows about it. And that affects the financial systems, and everything is just moving a lot faster than it used to. And it's not the days of, Henry Ford saying that you can have any color as long as it's black. Um,
Yeah.
so, that's the other part of it too, right? That everybody wants customizations in their car, and they want the latest and greatest tools. And so the whole manufacturing environment is changing in that way, where manufacturers no longer can just make black cars.
I do think
They got to
Elon
be
Musk
competitive.
said that too, though.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
I'll
funny,
agree.
I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here, but I don't know if you listen to Elon Musk on Joe Rogan, but it was so
Yeah.
funny listening to him, because he's like, hey, prototypes are easy. He goes, the hard part is manufacturing. He goes, manufacturing is so hard. And his giga plant, what do they call his plants? The
Gigafactory.
gigafactory. He actually said that he calculated, in his ginormous brain, that there was like a 5 to 8% chance of this being successful, because he saw how difficult manufacturing is. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yes. So it was interesting to hear him say that
I've
how
been there.
difficult manufacturing it is, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
yeah. I know
yeah.
people that could tell you many stories about bringing up
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, so not to get totally sidetracked, but yeah,
Line in a
so
box.
the idea, the idea was, how could we, if somebody, at that time I worked at Detroit Manufacturing Systems, which was um a value add assembler, in one of their biggest assembly. They did the dashboards for the F-150, so the biggest selling car in the world or whatever. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
They were like, well, with the supply chain issues, if we needed to prop up a plant in Chicago, how what would that look like? And so that's where the conversation started, and it was related to how quickly can we set up a plant and efficiently, and how quickly can we be up and running production. And the idea was building kind of a portfolio of tools, including all the way through the infrastructure. So how do we, typically you're waiting for an MPLS connection. And sometimes those orders can take 8 months, 10 months to get just a connection into your LAN, your local area network, so that you can start running this servers and systems, right, and get
Yeah.
access to your ERP system. So the whole idea was, with the technology that we have out there, how quickly can we be up and running, and let's put together a portfolio of ideas and call it line in a box. Or it's the same thing with a line. If you needed to set up a line really quickly in your plant,
Yeah.
how quickly could you do that, and what are the tools that you would need to do that? And the idea was to give them kind of a portfolio of, this is what you do, here's our tools, this is why we're using them. And we talked about 5G, things like 5G and SD-WAN technology, so software defined networks. And then of course we talked about the MES, because you want to be able to have an MES that you can slot in, and it might be a slightly different process. So how quickly can you put the MES in an efficient manner, secure manner, and get that production line up and running? So that was the idea of putting together this like package, line in a box or plant in a box, that we can hand over to some people, and they can look at it and say, oh, these are the tools that we're going to use, and this is kind of an outline of how quickly we can be up and running. So that was
Nice.
kind of the idea behind that.
Yeah, now this is going to sound like a very silly question, but I'm just going to ask. Obviously, there isn't an entire
No
line
questions
inside
are
of the
dumb
box.
questions. Yeah.
Challenge accepted. No, no. So with the line of the box, does that assume? Let's say I have 5 manufacturing plants. Boom, I'm adding another line to my 5th plant. Do I already have the physical line's already there, right? You're saying I can take my little line in a box and implement it, right? I mean, obviously, I know it assumes that that's already most likely in place or ordered or being
Yeah,
built,
the
or
idea is that
depending
you
on
don't
what it
start
is.
from the beginning, right? That
Yeah.
you don't go back and say, okay, which touchscreens do we use? I mean, simple
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it gets much bigger and more complicated, but at the very least,
Of course.
that plant can go in there and say, okay, instead of going back and say, hey, should we use this touchscreen? Should we use that touchscreen? And
Yep.
people are like, I don't know.
And
You
it's like,
know,
well,
So
and
here's
then it turns
this.
into
You're
Here's your
implementing
inflows or whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah.
standards and like a
Standards.
template.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just thought I'd reiterate that, obviously you don't have an entire line inside of a box. I mean, that'd be awesome. Impressive.
Yeah. Then it was the whole
I like it.
conversation of can we put it on MES in the cloud? I mean, there's all kinds of ideas about putting that in the cloud.
Let's hear it. I'm curious.
Yeah, the flexibility of being able, any cloud tool is so much more flexible and especially a subscription model where I can go on a piece of software and sign up for 3 months, and then I can, if that user no longer is using the software, you disconnect it. You don't have servers. You don't have any. I mean, it takes away all.
That's beneficial for
seasonal.
Yeah, well, definitely, or like like pop-up type manufacturing for seasonal. Yeah. But no, I was thinking that. Oh, I don't know. I lost my thought. Go ahead.
No, I mean,
I'll come back.
That's
Savage Your Life.
That's exactly what you're saying is exactly where I was going. Actually, I was like, there is definitely use cases for being able to do that with especially a smaller shop who gets an order for a particular product and they want to set up an MES for their users to how to assemble that particular product, and they don't want to have to change everything. They can sign into a MES cloud solution, set up their op stations, but. The other side is when you're in I don't know if you ever worked in a just-in-time and just-in-sequence facility. Those are, and I'll give you an example.
Different tries.
I'll give you an example for the people that are listening. Like that could be very intense, like super intense, to the point where you get a broadcast from, say, a Jeep Chrysler, and we had a plant right across the street from them that was assembling. Mm-hmm. And they're expected to have those products on the truck in 4 hours. So not only on the truck in 4 hours, but they have them in a specific sequence. And not only that, but you think about it, there could be 25 different variations of this product. So you got to be sure that you got the right sequenced items that have the right components on the truck and assembled in 4 hours. And so you can imagine having an MES in the cloud. If something gets disconnected and you can't manufacture without the MES system because it's bringing in it's showing you the sequence and the items you need in that sequence. So there's definitely a case for a cloud, but also I'm like, well, there's some scenarios that you better be damn sure that if you go offline, you can still produce. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had these conversations before. This is like a record that keeps going. It's not broken; it just keeps going. It's a little bit different every time. So I'd like to poke at you a little bit here and get you to help me think through this. There's been this reminds me of a previous manufacturer that I worked for who. The MES wasn't hosted on-prem, it was hosted in our data center. So when you say, hey, what's the difference between this data center and hosting in the cloud? They say, well, it's on-prem. I'm like, well, no, you have, LAN here, you've got redundant LAN here. Like, yeah, one goes down, this comes up. Yes, you have a redundant server system. Like, okay, why can't we do this in the cloud? Why do we need this infrastructure to manage this if if you're paying, AWS or someone who's got 99.997% uptime, you've got guaranteed network that you're paying for. What's the difference? Except that you have a bunch of people that you're paying to manage this infrastructure.
Right.
Help me understand it, because I've had these conversations, and
No,
I've had directors of IT or VPs be like,
that's an internal cloud.
Not
I
gonna
mean, all
happen.
it is it's basically, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the cloud is just a marketing term, right? I mean, in the end,
Right. Yeah.
in the end, it's just your internal cloud. You have an internal data center that's on your WAN. That you're providing internal cloud services. It's just not being hosted on a AWS or an Azure server. So yeah, we had those similar conversations. Like we were like, in some cases we need the physical hardware sitting in the building.
So I've done that too. And the best part was, okay, well, this is its own physical hardware. Each facility is going to have its own instance. Do those instances operate if they can't connect to the parent instance? No.
Right.
It's like, what? That's not even, that defeats the entire purpose.
Right.
They're like, oh, they can cache 10 orders. It's like, okay, so
10?
we have an hour to get it back up, or whatever it is, depending on.
I mean, I guess, are you making those 10 orders like that, or is it 10 that take all day?
Right. Well, and that's another that's another conversation, is where do you cache that order in order to continue your manufacturing process if something like your MES goes down? Well, that's another problem. Why did your MES go down? Do you have a network issue? Did the server crash? Do you have redundancy? Like, should you be manufacturing without your MES system connected? Like, what if you get a discrepancy in your data for your scrap or your yield, or someone can't check a part number because it's blah blah blah, right? Like, how do we handle that? Oh, well, we don't know. They will handle that when it happens, but we're gonna have this buffer, So it's like, just a little engineer here. I don't know. Just made my point. I gotta leave now.
Bye. No, I don't leave.
That's how you feel sometimes. You're just like, all right, okay. If you say it's gonna run, it's gonna run.
I mean, I'm gonna contradict myself, because I often want to think that maybe we could try doing that, an MES system in the cloud, with the reliability of connections being much better than they used to be. I think definitely you need a backup, and it's pretty inexpensive these days to put in a 5G backup. And with software defined networks, it's much easier for us to configure that kind of stuff with redundancy. But I've also been in the case where, we didn't have a lot of redundancy, and somebody with a semi truck, went down the wrong road and hit a line and knocked out the complete network. So, I mean, it's always, I often think that as long as you put in the right redundancy, it is possible that you could run an MES. But I would say this, the other thing is if you're doing track and trace, and you're high volume, and you're trying to send that data to the cloud, latency is a big issue. I mean, especially engineering data, any large amounts of data, latency is a big issue. You want to make sure that you can function if you're doing that track and trace, and especially with high volume stuff. So
certainly, it's a lot of transactions. I mean, it can, once you get all these systems connected, like the more stuff you get connected to your PLC, I've seen PLCs slow down. Like, like, oh, that's not good. Like, I mean, not the real-time processing aspect of it, but like, the prioritization of the network communication is lower. So then you're like, okay, we're trying to do this track and trace, this real-time MES, where we need, all the machinery is waiting for a transaction back to say, yes, go ahead, move along, or yes, this is okay, or no, that's the wrong barcode, yes, whatever. That's an interesting challenge on its own, I think.
Then you find out the CEO is having a fireside chat. He's got priority.
He's like, all the bandwidth.
Right.
All of it.
4K resolution, 60 frames a
Right.
second.
Nah, 8K.
It's what the
Oh.
CEO wants, man.
Ooh-wee. Now and maybe I'm just this kind of well, it's on topic, but it's kind of because I'm like, did we talk about this? Did we talk about scalability, scaling? I don't think we.
No, not
Okay,
really. Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
since we were talking about redundancy and having, well, I don't know if if you have multiple plants and it's spread about and or just some manufacturers grow so fast.
Yep.
How do you? I mean, do you think? What are your thoughts on scalability with this, with the no code, or
Yeah.
you just had to pop, just
Yeah. So
popping
that's
out
the
lines?
idea of, a few things that we've talked about today.
Get a
So
line.
yeah, the line in the box and
You get a line, you get a line, you get a
the
line.
plant in
Yeah.
the box
Mhm.
mentality, but also, you don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And one of the things I really like about our Spark MES is that
Mhm.
we're not telling you that it's gonna that we can just hand it to you and it's gonna work.
Of course.
You can say it's 80% done or whatever you want to do, but
Mhm.
you want to make sure that at least you have a foundation there and you're not reinventing the wheel every time you got to set up a MES on a new line. So
Yep.
Yeah.
basically, if we have something that we can give you that's 80% done and then we just need to tweak it,
Yeah.
that would be the ultimate solution rather than starting over again. Man, that's a good argument too for a standard MES solution in the first place. Is I've gotten to those battles too of a company that's a worldwide company that's got
Mhm.
17 different MES systems. Well, do you want to
Wow.
standardize on an MES system? Well, it says a lot when you have a team that is familiar with the MES system, and then on top of that, you have a kind of standard platform that's 80% done already that does basic stuff like OEE out of the box and the basic stuff that you need. And then you can go implement that without having to start from the very beginning, the whole RFP process of picking a vendor and all that other stuff, as long as it's
Yeah.
an MA system that's been working for you well. The other, I just had a conversation this morning with somebody about their company has a bunch of different MES systems, and I was like, well, sometimes as long as the data's good,
Mhm.
we don't want to tip over the grocery cart or whatever. I don't know what the
Mhm.
saying is, but
Just kind of let it
yeah, it's a
let it
Brazilian
regulate.
MES system.
Yeah.
It's in Portuguese and it works for them and it's working well. Well, if you're going to start sharing data to our global ERP system, we want to make sure the data is good.
Yep.
But go ahead, keep using that MES. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
That tickled another brain cell. There was a major electronic vehicle manufacturer that I worked for a few years ago. So not the new one, but a major one. And they developed their own MES in-house. And it was basically, from my standpoint as an engineer on the manufacturing floor, it was exactly what I wanted, where it was
Wow.
no code. And every night it was running on use Kubernetes. So every night you would cache the database for the manufacturing execution system, and then you could rapidly spin up a new mirror instance that you could build off from. So I could put together my workflow for the manufacturing line, and then I could start hitting the API endpoint using this unique key for my instance, and I could evaluate new flows. I could evaluate equipment communications and try a new process. And then if I wanted to, I could save and merge the changes so that the next day that was the live instance. Of course, the data was gone. It's all test data.
Yeah.
But so basically you took from having this IT department, having to do everything, having to be involved, to saying, let the engineers on the floor do this whole thing and it's good to go. Granted, there was technically 3 days that we spent chasing down 3 spaces that I put at the end of an API call. It's terrible. I don't know. It was working yesterday. I don't know what you guys did.
What did you
That's
do?
what
took the blame off from IT.
That's what ChatGPT does now, right? You just
Oh,
feed
geez.
it in there. It'll tell you where your problem is.
So yeah, it was pretty neat though. It's just unbelievable, like how many resources they must have been able to save to just be like, yeah, the people we have can do this. And I mean, that's also that manufacturer's mentality is like,
Yeah.
as things break them, recover, make it work, and like empower the people who know the most about what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean that sounds like a dream scenario. I mean I don't think anybody would be angry if they had a system like that.
No, and then yeah, I was able to teach the MES support technicians like here's how you use the software, and here's how it works for our line. Go roll this out. And they're like,
Yep,
got it. And you're like, yes.
Yep. So
wow,
that company was big enough that they could do that themselves. But like I said before, like 90, probably 99% of the other manufacturing companies can't do that. So you would like to give them
they still weren't profitable,
right?
They still weren't making money at that time, right? So it's somebody
sometimes
at the head of that company is very smart and understands like this is how we need to move forward.
Yeah. Right.
So hopefully that feeds into what you're going to say. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that. Yeah, that's what I would strive to look for a platform that was at least similar to that I could hand over to the operations guys and they could be the masters of their own domain and at least, put in those op stations, like I said before, and not have to call IT every 5 minutes. IT's there to support, but like I said, if Excel breaks, call IT. But if you need to make a pivot table, and you're in the finance department, I hope that you can make a pivot table without calling IT, right? But sometimes Microsoft Office isn't working, and then you call IT.
Right? Office confuses me sometimes. It's terrible. I remember being a kid and like any technology, I could nail it. As soon as it came out, I was like, I got this. I'll play with it. I'll figure it out. I could answer anything, And now it's outpacing me. I can't do it. I'm just like, where did this go in the ribbon? It used to be here.
Yeah, right. Every 6 months.
My taskbar is only on the bottom. Windows 11. I want it on top. I like it on the top of my screen.
Yeah.
My other analogy to get away from it, technology, I was like, the other thing is I like to watch F1. So I watch F1 and I was like, well, if the car racer, if you're depending on, Verstappen, he's the number one, racer right now with Red Bull. If you're depending on him to fix your car, you're going to be in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the stay in your lane kind of scenario. Like IT to me in the scenario is the guys that try to optimize the car, fix the car, make the car run. And then we would like to hand it over to the operations people and they can drive it, right? And they can do everything as far as driving that car, and they don't have to call back to IT and they're like, hey, I have a left-hand turn. I don't know what to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're right.
No, you're right. And I mean, honestly, that's kind of playing devil's advocate too, in a way. It's like, yes, you can empower your people to do things, but at the same time, you need the people that know the technology, that can foster the relationships, that can handle the evaluations and analyze what needs to be done. And I don't want to forget that, right? Like the whole thing we've been talking about, like the big purpose, we've been talking about this whole thing is like, what did it start out with? How do you get rid of your IT department? You don't. You need to change and manipulate, like work to be as efficient as possible in this new ever-changing environment. Stay on the edge of technology. Really understand what's going to help your company, your people, your clients, accelerate their digital transformation.
Yep.
Specific to manufacturing, I just like we talked about in manufacturing IT, embed your IT people in those departments to really understand the problem and not become the biggest problem in the room, because that's what I hear all the time is IT is always the bottleneck. IT is always the problem. If we have those IT people who are engaged and with those companies that are willing to train the IT people a little on the OT side and the OT people on the IT side, and we both understand each other's worlds, we should be able, and you call it whatever you want, whatever manufacturing innovation department, whatever you want to tagline your department. But that's where I see the future, because like I said, we're not sitting in a server room with no windows, trying to make sure the servers keep running. That's
Yep.
slowly going away, and the more cloud tools are out there, and the more things, it frees up the IT people's time to do those value add activities, right? To really help the business solve problems. So.
Oh, for sure. And then less work for them, as long as they're confident with what you're doing. Everyone's happy, right? Well, hopefully.
Yep. Yeah, and I think and I always have to mention this because
Yeah.
the technology to me always works, and I always get those questions, especially when I would talk about smart manufacturing and artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that stuff, and there's a lot of people who are like, it's just hype, and I would say no, it's coming. And we've seen it, especially over the last couple of years with ChatGPT. I mean, it's kind of exploded. And I always say that the technology works.
Yes.
Usually where things fail is the people in the process. And as you stated, Brennan, you have to have the right people, and you have to understand your process. And you can't really slot in a good technology until you have those two things.
That's fair.
So those are huge. Yeah.
It definitely is. I know we could keep going, and I hate to have to end it. We are coming to the top of the hour here. Do you have any last not closing statements? We're not in court right now. Do you have anything else you want to say, or any last remarks, Brennan or Isaac?
I just want to thank Isaac for coming to join us today. It's been a great conversation. This is my preferred method of live chat, is just having a great conversation about a great topic with a very knowledgeable person
with a great guest.
Yeah, I'm glad you were here. Hopefully we'll talk about this more in the future. And
definitely.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you.
If I talk anymore, I'm gonna get hangry because I need to eat some lunch.
Oh, it is that time. I do apologize for
I would say
taking your
this.
lunch.
No. I'm gonna go eat lunch after this. But I'd say I always tell people this too. Like the whole concept is we're talking about a big concept and a big strategy, and I always try to break it down and say we don't need to bite off the big chunk. If you want to start a pilot on one line in your plant and try to look at some of these options for low code, no code MES systems, you can do it. You don't have to decide that 25 plants need a new MES system. You give us a call and we can look at options for just doing it on one op station if you want. Whatever, just to see if it works for you. And so my mantra has always been start small, think big, start small, scale fast. Is kind of it. I stole it from Steve Jobs, but yeah,
I like it.
It's good. Well, like Brennan said, we're really glad that you took the time to be with us today, and everybody that's watching. We had a great time, learned a lot. Hopefully everyone else out there also learned a lot. So yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead, call it quits for today. Now, Brennan, do you want to help remind me real quick? Do we have another stream scheduled for December? I think we're in the process
don't know.
of
Yeah, we're figuring out what day to put it on because we're near the
holidays and all that.
Yeah, and what kind of content we want to do. So
and what we want to do, right? So I guess for those that are interested, just keep an eye out on our LinkedIn page. If you're on Twitch, you'll get a notification. But check out our LinkedIn page. If anyone ever has questions after the streams, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm all for it, and we'd be more than willing to help and help you point you in the right direction.
Yep.
So I guess that's that, and we will go ahead and end. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.